this review, I'm going to have to do a callback to a blaster that I reviewed almost a year ago, because this thing is very similar, and yet the small changes they did make it a different recommendation altogether, and it's kind of funny how that works. But about a year ago, I reviewed the Adventure Force Enforcer, which was a chain-fed full-auto dart blaster that was pretty darn good for what it was, but it didn't really blow me away. The one thing I thought this blaster fit into more than any other blaster, except for maybe the Scorpion, was the fact that you could easily hang this thing off a belt and use it as a secondary. I know it's a little big, it's a little bulky, but the idea of that is that the rate of fire on this blaster and the capacity was just good enough to use it as a dedicated kind of a suppressing blaster, something that you could fire for about 30-40 seconds and keep somebody pinned down or zombies at bay or something while your team kind of reorganizes and readjusts to the situation. Not a bad use for something like this, and really it's one of the few blasters you can do something like that with, because the way this thing worked is that it didn't have any magazines or anything like that, and it was all self-contained, because what these drums on the side did was guide the belt around, and then you could remove the belt if you so chose to reload it easier or replace it completely, but it had a tensioner down here and everything like that. It was meant to be that kind of blaster, and honestly it worked really well, and it was a pretty decent recommendation from me, even though it fit that kind of small niche. However, the Zone Dartstorm is a little bit different. Now you can see it's the same blaster for all intents and purposes, but they've changed the feeding mechanism, and they've actually changed some things inside as well to a modest degree. But instead of having the dart tensioners, this has, well, some pretty phallic dart catchers on it. It makes the blaster look really, really phallic. And that's just so it can feed a belt through, and then when the belt is empty, it falls off into the other side. You can replace it, or you can reload it and put it back through. But this change, while good in more of making this more of a primary, because again, 40 darts non-stop is not something to kind of scoff at, and then when you bring up the fact that you can effortlessly reload this thing, although it does have this sort of annoying dart door on it, you can in fact reload it, just like with the Lightstorm, by barely placing the entire chain into the feeding mechanism, and it will grab it and pull it through no problem, and it has the support here, so 40 darts no problem whatsoever, and it will work with your light command. As long as you have some fresh batteries, the light command will pull this 40 dart chain through, no issue whatsoever. But that changes my kind of opinion on the Enforcer, because the Enforcer was a great secondary. This is a bit better of a primary. My only problem, and my only knock against this blaster, is that it came out at the same time as the Light Command. The Light Command is a phenomenal blaster. Honestly, a very, very good blaster. While this does have a larger capacity, comes with more darts, it's only $5 more than the Light Command. It's not as good. That's the only issue. It's a better deal, technically, and you could, if you were using a support role, like a non-stop firing support role, this would work really good for you. But it's not, in my opinion, it's not as good. It does have a slightly worse velocity, just ever so slightly. It's still hitting crazy hard, over 100 FPS some shots, and a slightly worse rate of fire, which is a little disappointing, but the rate of fire is improved from the Enforcer. I don't know why that is. I don't think it was different batteries, but yeah, it fires slightly faster than the Enforcer, making it, again, a pretty usable package, but again, it's still not as good as the Lightstorm. That's the only con I have against this thing. Now, again, if you wanted to use this, again, from a competitive standpoint, which is kind of what I look at my blasters from, there is a use for this thing, because you can launch an entire chain through it, and then you can discard the chain, put a new one in. However you would wish to do that, it's a little more difficult for me, but you get what I'm saying. Put a new chain through it, and you don't have to lift up that door, you can just push it in there and keep firing. And a 40 dart chain is smaller than a 35 round Nerf drum. In fact, if you link chains together, which you can kind of do with this, as long as you put the chain in there properly. I've gotten a 63 dart chain through this blaster. It will fit, it will fire, and 63 darts is, again, the same size as a 35 round Nerf drum. Something to keep in mind. And yes, it will feed that perfectly fine. It does have a little spillover, but you can fire it, and then when it's done, pitch it, put a new chain in there. It will work with the 20 dart chains from like the things like the Scorpion as well. Less useful, but it does work. But you can't really use this as the whole secondary kind of thing, which is what I liked about the Enforcer. I felt like that was a good niche for the Enforcer, because it worked kind of like, oh, you could have a Speed Swarm or something as your secondary. Something with a lot of capacity that's, again, really easy to carry on you. Just, I have a hook on my battle belt that this would just fit onto, and it would just sit there on my hip. Yeah, it's big, but it's light. It's really, really light. So, yeah, a very good use for the Enforcer. This is, you can't really do that because, yeah, this will get everywhere, this will fall out, and you will be very, very sad pandas. But again, it fires a little bit better, and technically nothing is stopping me. It even has the point on the bottom right there from putting those features on this and just having a better blaster overall. Kind of weird how that works out. But again, I think the biggest problem is that while it does technically work just fine, and it's technically a little bit better of a deal than the Light Command, because this is $5 more from Target, Light Command is $25 from Walmart. Light Command lights up, but 20 dart chain, less darts, 40 dart chain, more darts. There are reasons to pick this up. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people out there who's like, oh, I just like the idea of this super phallic blaster that I can, yeah, spray people down with. That's really fun. I'm sure lots of people are going to enjoy that, and I'm not knocking them for that. If you enjoy if you like the idea of this more, you're only taking small hits here and there to pick up the Dartstorm over something like the Light Command, but the Light Command is slightly better in my opinion. So keep that in mind, but there is a use for this. It does, in fact, hold more ammo. If you do buy one of these, the chain will work with your Light Command. There's some things to love here. And it looks cool. I mean, who doesn't like that? Honestly. That's funny. I don't care who you are. Let me know what you think about the Dartstorm / Enforcer kind of dichotomy I was working on down in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your feedback. If you can think of something that this does way better than the Enforcer, I mean, besides reload speed and stuff like that, I mean, I'd love to hear it. Again, this versus the Light Command, which is another, you know, primetime toys blaster, I'm having a hard time recommending it over that, but some people might not have them in their Walmart and have a Target nearby that has this, and this is a very good alternative, don't get me wrong. And again, stupidly cheap. $30 might seem like a lot, but when you compare it, like, if something like this were to be made by, I don't know, Hasbro, it would cost a lot more. And probably work way worse. So, there's a lot to appreciate there. But again, let me know what you think down in the comment section below. If you have any ideas for this one, I'd love to hear it, because I have ideas for this one, just ignore the fact that I already murdered it for the chain. Too big, said 63 dart chain, but whatever. I'm Walcom S7, thank you very much for watching this video. Of course, I hope to see you in an entirely different one.